The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the City of Plant City Planning Board meeting of August 26th. Welcome. Thank you much. Thank you very much for coming. First order of business is approval of the minutes of July 22nd. Has the minutes been reviewed and we have a motion? Yeah. We have a move for approval by Bruce Rodwell. Is there a second? Second. We have a second from Jeremy Burris. Any discussion? I'll make one comment. At the end of the minutes is the item that you brought up at the last meeting, Jeremy. That was to discuss it, and we'll do that on a time. We had originally said in the minutes we would do it at this meeting, but it's going to be on a time available basis. Gotcha. Because we have a number of agenda items, but if we can, we will. Otherwise, we'll do it the next meeting. Yeah. Any further discussion of the minutes? Okay, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. She's going to call the roll.
The line. Okay. Chair Wood,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burris,
Here. Yes.
Chairman Carr,
Yes.
Douglas Jiggers,
Here. Yes.
Nicholas Thurston,
Yes.
Bruce Wadwell,
Here.
Jason Jones.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next item of business is public comments. This is an offer to the public to speak on anything that's not on the agenda. Would anyone like to speak to the planning board? Okay, thank you.
We need to mention electronically submitted public comments.
Oh, okay. You know what? I'm trying to do it without
Yeah.
this hybrid meeting is tripping me up. Okay, I guess I should read this. Electronically submitted public comments are disseminated to the planning board members prior to the start of today's meeting for the review and inclusion at the official record. No comments were received. Okay, we have, then we've completed the public comments. All the items we have before us are quasi judicial, so we'll need a swearing of anyone that's going to be speaking. Madam Clerk, do you conduct the swearing in?
Yes, if they please stand, anybody who's speaking. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Thank you. Next order of business is the case PB 2020-11, Bonsilva preliminary plat and waiver of reclaimed lines. City staff, Robin, you may proceed. Please state your name and address and that you've been sworn in.
Thank you. Good morning. For the record, Robin Baker, Senior Planner with the Planning and Zoning Department, and I have been sworn in. The first request before you this morning is PB 2020-11, which is the Bonsilva preliminary plat and waiver request. Yesterday's hearing was completely virtual, so I got to tell her to change the slide. Now I'm in control.
Okay.
So the request is for a preliminary plat to establish a 71-lot single-family subdivision with a waiver request to the requirement for the installation of reclaimed water lines. The site is located at the northwest corner of James L. Redmond Parkway and West Trapnell Road. Its zoning is the James L. Redmond at Trapnell Road Planned Development District, which was approved a little earlier this year. Future land use is a mixed-use gateway, and the proposed density on this property is 3.8 units per acre. The proposed lot size, the smallest proposed, is 6,300 square feet, which is 60 by 105. The actual PD approved was approved for 50-foot wide lot, but they chose 60-foot wide instead. This is an overall view of the preliminary plat showing the lot layout. This is a mixed-use project, so the blank areas that you see up there along James L. Redmond, those will actually be commercial uses. There's a required 80-20 split in the mixed-use gateway, so this particular project is about 80% single-family and it'll be 20% non-residential. They have requested a waiver from providing reclaimed water. The Utilities Division had no objections to the waiver request, noting that the reclaimed water is not available to the site. Staff has reviewed the preliminary plat and associated waiver for consistency with the technical requirements of Chapter 94, Chapter 102 of the Plan City Code of Ordinances, and the MIT 2040 Plan City Comprehensive Plan. Staff recommends the Planning Board find the preliminary plat for Bonsilva consistent with the technical requirements noted above, and recommends approval of the preliminary plat and associated waiver, and to forward the waiver request to the City Commission with a recommendation of approval. I'm here, Kathy.
Does the board have any questions for Ms. Robin? Ms. Baker.
This is, this is Bonnie. Chair, do I have, I just had a question on the reclaimed waiver. I'm trying to just recall where our last discussion on this. I understand that it's not available. I thought there might have been some wording that we had used in the past, anticipating that if the construction was concluded or was near conclusion, I guess after the water is available, or there was something that would be kind of a temporary source, so that it would not just be a full waiver. Am I recalling that right? Does anyone else?
Yes,
Can the staff speak to that?
you are correct. There's specific requirements in the code that say that if it's not within 100 feet, that they don't have to run the lines, okay? But there has been some discussion that if there is future plans to run the reclaimed water lines in those areas, that we require them to install what they call dry lines. So that way, when the lines are available, they can just connect right up. But as you know, this area of the city is be new to water and sewer. We're just recently running in that area. So it was the decision of the utilities department that they were far enough away. There were no plans to have reclaimed water in this area anytime in the future. So they had no objection to the waiver request.
Okay. Okay, I understand the difference now.
Okay, that was my recollection also. Yeah. Does anyone else have questions for Ms. Baker? Okay. Mr. Boggs, my understanding that you're going to be representing the applicant. Would you like to speak? I guess you do. Would you please give us your name, address, and state that you've been sworn in?
Steve Boggs, 607 South Alexander Street. I have been sworn.
Thank you, sir.
We agree with staff recommendations. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer them for you.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this matter? I'll ask one more time. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this matter? Okay, we'll close the public comment. I'm sorry. Is there any board discussion on the matter?
Yeah, and I just wanted to let you know, we did receive no, any.
Oh, we got to check on that.
Yes.
And there's nobody on the line.
Yeah, there's nobody who made any requests.
Okay, we got to get used to this hybrid format. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
So any further discussion from the board? Okay, well, I'll entertain the motion from the board. The item is on your screen there. It's to approve a preliminary plat with the waiver of reclaimed lines.
Mr. Wood, I'll make a motion
Okay,
that Bon Silva preliminary plat and waiver of reclaimed lines consistent with our 2020 with our plan.
okay.
Motion approved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I will second that motion.
Okay, we have a second. Any discussion of the motion? I'll call for the vote. Madam Clerk?
Chair Wood,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burris,
Yes.
Bonnie Carr,
Yes.
Doug Driggers,
Yes.
Nicholas Thurston,
Yes.
Bruce Rodwell,
Yes.
Jason Jones.
Yes.
Thank you. Vote passes.
Thank you.
I mean, trains. I love driving.
Next order of business is PB 2020-18, Turkey Creek Industrial Tracts Final Plat. City staff, you may proceed. Chair recognizes Robin Baker.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, for the record, Robin Baker, Planning and Zoning, and I've been sworn in. The next request before you is PB 2020-18 for the Turkey Creek Industrial Tracts Final Plat. This is it's a little bit different than what we're used to seeing as far as usually we go through construction plans for these types of plats, but with this particular one, we're just splitting up the property. So the request is for a final plat for Turkey Creek Industrial Tracts, creating a 5-lot industrial subdivision. It's located in the northwest corner of Turkey Creek Road and Reese Road and is approximately 49 acres. Future land use is industrial and the current zoning is MAP, which is our Airport Light Industrial District. This is an overall view of the lot split. It's not really evident on what you're looking at here, but this particular tract is surrounded on all sides by roadways. So that's what allowed them to go to this final plat without having to show improvements. But we did require them to add a note to the plat that said that as these individual property owners came in, that they would have to go through the construction plan process to show that, they were providing water, sewer, all the normal improvements that they're required to show. Staff has reviewed the final plat for Turkey Creek Industrial Tract subdivision for consistency with the technical requirements of Chapter 94 and Chapter 102 of the Plant City Code of Ordinances, the Imagine 2040 Plant City Comprehensive Plan, Chapter 177, Part 1 of the Florida statutes, which deal with platting, and the Plant City Standard Guide Manual for Construction and Subdivision Development, and finds the final plat to be consistent with the above requirements. Therefore, staff recommends the planning board find the Turkey Creek Industrial Tract's final plat consistent with the above noted technical requirements and for it to be forwarded to the City Commission with a recommendation of approval. I'm here to have any questions.
So they must have a fairly specific plan in mind, because if they wanted, say, just 4 tracks, they'd have to come back before us and do a revision to the,
Correct. But it's also kind of the opposite. They have no idea what's going to go on these tracks.
Oh.
This is,
but this allows them to move forward?
right. It allows them to split the property and sell the individual tracts to
Oh, I see.
industrial owners who will then come in and show us what they're going to do and what improvements may be required.
So, okay, so we can expect a revisit on this then when a specific use comes up, if it doesn't meet those 5 boundary lines? Yeah,
Unless, yes, if they redo the plat, yes, it would come before this board again.
Okay.
For industrial users just to come in and develop the property, it would not come before you. It
right,
would just go through the construction plan process, but any change to the plat, yes.
right, okay. Yeah, we don't usually see these, so I'm trying to learn as we go. Right.
Any challenges in terms of what size building they can put on those 5 tracks? Or could somebody, for example, buy 2 tracks and then be able to build, just question, they bought 2, can they build a larger building then?
Sure. They're in the MAP zoning district, so they're
Okay.
going to be limited by the regulations of that zoning district, which is based on the floor area ratio. So they can only do a certain percentage of the site can actually be the
Okay.
building.
Okay. Okay, any further questions for Ms. Baker? Thank you. It's my understanding that Earl Williams and John Haney are representing the applicant and that they're available by phone. So let me ask, Mr. Williams and Mr. Haney, are you on the line?
I see.
I'll ask again, Mr. Williams and Mr. Haney, are you on the line?
Mr. Williams is on the line. Mr. Williams, if you've self-muted yourself, could you please maybe try unmuting yourself? Because we're showing you muted and you're unmuted on our end, so it must be on your end. There you go.
Okay, you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, can y'all hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you. Mr. Williams,
Okay.
we can hear you.
Okay. What specific question do y'all have on?
Question, I think he said.
Oh, I couldn't hardly hear him.
Guys, if you can hear us, I understand there was a question.
I mean, I'm looking around. No, I don't see any questions. Yeah.
I think he said he's here for any questions.
That's what I'm saying.
I think that's what he said.
Correct, and I don't see any questions. Is there any remarks you wish to make?
No, we don't have any specific remarks. Just I'm hearing based on what you guys were just speaking about. You're absolutely correct. All we're doing is just we're going in and just doing a basic land plat on the property, and once the property sells to a new person, it'll be their responsibility
We're losing you.
to come to the planning board.
Mr. Williams, we're losing
All
you.
appropriate
Have a good signal.
approvals and permitting for any type of structures or buildings they want to build on the
He's calling. Yeah, he looks like he's on the phone.
property. as well as
It sounds like he's got bad
they
cell.
wanted to go in and potentially pat the land further, that would all be.
Hi, everyone, and one other thing, we had an audio cut out a little bit earlier, so we didn't hear. We lost audio a little bit earlier, kind of what the concern questions the planning board may have. Said earlier, we lost audio a little bit earlier, we're unclear what the planning board concerns may have been.
We're unable to understand. We have a bad, I don't know if you have bad cell service.
Is this any better at this point?
Yes.
Yes,
I assume it's still not coming through correctly?
so far.
Okay. I said we had lost audio earlier, and we were unclear as to what any concerns that the planning board may have had.
No, there was no concerns, just a few clarification questions.
Okay. If there's anything there we can answer, we'll certainly try to do so.
Okay, I'll look around. I don't see any questions from board members. Is Mr. Haney on the line too? Does he wish to speak? Oh, that was Mr. Haney.
This is John Haney. I'm here.
Okay,
And again, just to reiterate, if you're able to hear me, like I said, the goal of this is just to place the parcels in a little more marketable fashion. And then again, any permitting for future development would obviously go through the process ahead of the planning board and building permits and so forth.
okay. Thank you, Mr. Haney.
Okay.
Board have any questions for either gentleman? Okay. Thank you. This is a public hearing, and in the notice for this hearing, the public was advised to contact the city clerk no later than 3 p.m. on August 25th, should anyone wish to speak virtually. Madam Clerk, did anyone contact your office to speak at this public hearing?
No request for received.
All right. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this matter? Yes, sir. Please come up. Identify yourself with your name and address and state that you've been sworn in. And we did have a chance to clean down the surface? Okay. Yes, sir.
It's George Ambos. Yeah, I was sworn in, and got a piece of property on Reese Road,
Okay. What is your address, sir?
4605. We're about 100 yards in to the left.
Okay, thank you.
And our only concern was if they are going to build an industrial park or whatever it is, a few people have driven on Reese Road as of lately where you make the right turn. The road's a disaster. It's constant potholes come and go. I've had to call. The only way we get them filled is I'll call and tell them, it's dangerous. I mean, if you care about the front ends on your vehicles at all, I mean, it's a mess. They come, they throw a little blacktop, they press it down, and then when I hear an industrial park could be coming, is somebody going to do something about that road? Because, if you haven't driven on that road, I invite you to take a little stroll. It's a mess. It's been a mess for probably 5 years. There's a couple of industrial properties on Reese Road as it is now. And I'm thinking if they build an industrial park there, or whatever they're going to do, there's going to be tractor trailer traffic. And I'll tell you, that road, it's not going to take much for it to be a complete disaster. And that's my only concern as far as this.
Okay, good. Thank you for bringing it up. Are there any other public comments? Mr. Williams or Mr. Haney, would you like to a moment to address what the speaker said? Are you still on the line?
Sure. This is Earl. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, if you actually look at our plat, to address the portions on Reese Road, we have 2 lots that front on Reese Road. We have a lot 4 and a lot 5. If you look at lot 4, we actually received a variance from the county, and actually the driveway access for that is shared with lot 3 on Turkey Creek Road. So there is no approved access at this point based off of our plat of anything on Reese Road for lot 4. And regarding lot 5, that's the only lot that we would have that would front on Reese Road. And if you again look at the plat on that, there's a large portion of that property that is wetlands and so forth. So there's not going to be enough room to create an industrial park per se. There may be enough room for a structure or building or some type of a single type use, but definitely not enough space for any type of industrial park.
Yeah. Okay, good, thank you. If anyone else would like to speak on this? Okay, the hearing is closed. Board members, any discussion? Any discussion? Would someone like to call for a motion?
Move for approval, finding it consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Okay, so we have a motion from Bonnie Carr. Is there a second? Okay, we have a second from Mr. Thurston. Any discussion of the motion? Call for the vote, Madam Clerk.
Chair Wood,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burris,
Yes.
Bonnie Carr,
Yes.
Doug Rivers, Nick Thurston,
Yes.
Bruce Rodwell,
Yes.
Jason Jones.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Vote pass.
Thank you all. Moving on, the next order of business is item PB 2020-20, Eastland Industrial Plan Development Modification. This is a quasi-judicial hearing. City staff, you may proceed.
Thank you. Again, for the record, Robin Baker, Planning and Zoning, and I've been sworn in. The application before you is 2020-20 for a site located on the east and west sides of Charlie Taylor Road, south of South Frontage Road, and north of US Highway 92 East. The future land use on this property is industrial and natural preservation, and the existing zoning is the Eastland Industrial Plan Development. The applicant has actually requested 2 conceptual modifications to the PD. The first being to modify the architectural requirements. They're proposing alternative architectural standards that are specific to industrial development. You'll see in your staff report that was provided the actual language. I won't read through all of it, but essentially this PD was required to meet our big box retail standards. And the purpose of those standards is specific for retail commercial developments that have a high volume of customer traffic. And it's our belief, based on research in the file, that this particular requirement was added the day of the planning board hearing in an attempt to help the neighbors that had some concern. There was one particular neighbor that had requested some specific requirements from the PD, and those were met by the only requirement we had at the time for architectural standards, which was the big box standards. So the applicant is proposing their own standards that are very specific to industrial development. I think we can all agree that industrial development has come a long way from what it used to be. And so the language that's proposed, that's shown there in the staff report, is very specific to today's industrial development. And this graphic that you're looking at here on this slide is an architectural rendering of those exact requirements that they're proposing. The second modification, oh, sorry, we've already talked about this. Is just so you can see here, the graphic to the north there, that's out of our code for the big box standards. So you can see from those standards that it requires a lot of these recesses and projections. And the ultimate goal is actually to make these buildings look like homes. So you can see from the layout there that it looks like a big house, right? Well, that's not very conducive to industrial development, because on the inside of warehouses, you have forklifts, you have scissor lifts, that kind of thing maneuvering around. If they're constantly having to go around corners, it's a safety hazard. So the graphic there on the bottom is an elevation that is, again, a representation of the standards that the applicant is proposing. The second request, we're missing a graphic there, is to modify the landscape requirements adjacent to the single family uses. There is a specific specific note 16 that requires they have to do a 4-foot berm with landscaping, and the berm has to be graduated over 150 feet. Because of some of the areas of the site and how it's designed, and I've shown you that here, on the aerial you can see where those single-family homes are, and that little piece.
They're on the bottom.
What's that?
The homes are on the bottom there?
Correct.
Yeah.
On the north side of North Wiggins Road there, you'll see that piece that comes down. And on the left-hand side, you'll see the PD plan. You'll see that in that area, they've proposed a pond. Well, with that pond there, it's pretty impossible for them to, provide a berm that graduates over 150 feet. So as an alternative, they're proposing different standards that would allow an additional option. So either they can do the berm as, previously required, or they could do a 6-foot opaque fence with landscaping on the outside of the fence. So what the neighbors would see is the landscaping on the outside of the fence.
So the landscaping would be on the neighbor's side of the fence?
Correct.
Okay.
Staff recommends the planning board find the conceptual modification to the Eastland Industrial Plan Development consistent with Article 4, Division 9 of Chapter 102 zoning of the Plant City Code of Ordinances and the Imagine 2040 Plant City Comprehensive Plan, and for it to be forwarded to the City Commission with a recommendation of approval. I'm here if you have any questions.
I've got, I guess you call it questions on the use of that fence. Is that very, very specific to this application? What I'm saying, in other words, are we creating any kind of a precedent where somebody can substitute a fence for a berm under any situation?
No, any conditions that are placed on a plan development site plan is specific to that site.
Okay, so there's no precedent created by this? Okay.
No, sir.
Okay. And do the neighbors get to choose whether it's a fence or a berm? Or does the one developing the lot choose? Yeah.
I think ultimately the only reason they're proposing it is because there's certain areas that they can't provide the berm.
Okay, so physically it's,
Yeah.
okay, that's what I thought you were saying.
And if you look at the graphic of the PD plan, you'll see that they've really gone above and beyond to provide the buffering, just natural buffering for
Right.
the residences. So all of their ponds, I guess
Right.
you can't see it from this one, but let me go back to that other graphic I had.
Okay, well, I know what you mean by the pond.
This, oops, going too far. So you can see that they've proposed ponds along
Mhm.
North Wiggins and along
Mhm.
the western side of the property there.
Yeah,
So they're already creating these kind of natural buffers, and some of the shape of the property just makes it difficult to do that berm. So
Yep.
that's the only reason they're proposing the additional option is for those areas that they can't do the berm,
okay,
that they have that other option.
okay, I understand. Any other questions for Ms. Baker? Okay, thank you. Thank you. It's my understanding that we have Ms. Cami Corbett, the applicant's land use attorney, available to speak in person, as well as additional representatives that are available virtually to answer any questions. And I've got several names that are people that are available. Ms. Corbett, would you like to address the board? Oh, you're here. I was looking to talk to my speaker here. Thank you for being here.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
Would you give us your name and address and
Sure.
state that you've been sworn in?
Yes, Cami Corbett, 101 East Kennedy Boulevard, Suite 3700. I'm with the law firm of Hill Ward Henderson, and I have been sworn. I'm here representing the Sudler Companies, which is the owner of the property and the developer of the property. Robin did a great job, as always, explaining our request and the reason for our request, and our team, including the architect who authored the design standards and our civil engineer who's working on the site planning that's currently under review. And Mr. Sudler, the owner of the property, are all available if you have any questions, and we would appreciate your approval this morning.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Corbett? So any questions for the other folks that are available on the line? Yeah. No? Okay. All right, this is a public hearing. In the notice for this meeting, the public was advised to contact the city clerk no later than 3 p.m. on August 25th, should anyone wish to speak virtually. Madam Clerk, did anyone contact your office to speak at this public hearing?
No request received.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this matter? Okay, the public hearing is closed. Are there any board members that wish to discuss this matter? Yes, I'll recognize Mr. Burris.
Just speaking to the group, I think you kind of asked it too, is the only thing I just want to reemphasize what Art was saying is we seem to be getting a lot of industrial spaces in Plant City, a lot, quite frankly, more than I wish we'd had to some degree. And I'm nervous about being pigeonholed in the future if we move forward on this. You know, there's at some point that we may have 5 or 6 homeowners or that in this particular situation works out well because there's a pond. But what if in the future we don't have that? And again, I definitely make sure the board is all transparent and clear with each other that we may have an opportunity like this in the future where we can't put a pond there because of a berm. So I'm just want to make sure we're thinking that through. That's all. That's my biggest concern of that.
Okay.
Because eventually we may have a homeowner that may not be happy if we can't accommodate them.
Thank you. Any other discussion points from board members? No questions? Okay, what's the pleasure of the board? I'll look for someone to make a motion if you're willing.
I'll make a motion to approve PB 2020-20, Eastland Industrial Plan Development Modification.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? I'll second that. We have a second from Mr. Rodwell. Any discussion on the motion? I'll call for the vote, Madam Clerk.
Chair Wood,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burris,
Yes.
Bonnie Carr,
Yes.
Doug Biggers,
Yes.
Nick Thurston,
Yes.
Bruce Rodwell,
Yes.
Jason Jones.
Yes.
Thank you. That passes 7-0.
Okay, thank you all. We'll move on to the next item of business, which is PB 2020-24, 1909 East Alsobrook rezoning. City staff, you may proceed.
For the record, Robin Baker, Planning and Zoning, and I have been sworn in. The final request before you today is PB 2020-24, which is a standard rezoning at 1909 East Alsobrook Street. The site is approximately 11.87 acres. Existing zoning on the site is R1A, which is one of our single-family dwelling districts. The proposed zoning is C1, which is our general commercial district. Future land use on this property is commercial. There were no objections from reviewing agencies for the request. As you can see from the graphic shown on the slide, we've got the C1A to the north across the street, and to the east and to the south, completely surrounding the property are PDs that allow much more intense industrial development. And we've got a pocket of R1 to the west. Staff recommends the planning board find the rezoning request from R1A, single family dwelling district, to C1 general commercial district consistent with chapter 102 zoning of the Plant City Code of Ordinances and the enacted 2040 Plant City Comprehensive Plan, and to forward the rezoning to the City Commission with a recommendation of approval. Here, if you have any questions.
I believe the material you sent to us stated that there was already a use in mind for the property. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Go back to the, I've got a graphic here. Maybe,
That's okay.
yep, here we go.
There it is.
This was submitted by the applicant, which is just a concept plan. This isn't a
Right.
set in stone plan, but it looks to be a climate controlled self-storage facility. That's what the big building is. It's hard to read the labels on
Yeah.
the smaller buildings, but it looks ultimately it's a self-storage
Yeah.
facility.
Yeah, you can see the wetlands is a challenge there. Yeah.
Yeah, there is a large wetland and they've proposed their ponds on the outside of that. So that residential 1 area that was to the west is going to be pretty buffered from that use.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Baker?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just a question on the property to the west. Looks like it's still residential 1. Are there homes there? It looks, or is that vacant directly to the west, the R1?
There is some development there. Those are duplexes, right? Yeah, it's a
That are-
Plant City Housing Authority property. There's some low-income housing there, some duplexes, and
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from Ms. Baker? Thank you. Good job again. Okay. It's my understanding that Mr. Peter Penza, the applicant representative, is available. Mr. Penza, are you on the line?
Yes, I am, sir.
Would you like to make any remarks? Yeah.
I'll make a few real briefly. Good morning. My name is Peter Penza. I'm an AICP certified planner with Avid Group, civil engineers, planners, and surveyors. I have been sworn in this morning. The site is proposed to be a self-storage facility and gas station convenience store with both regular fueling facilities as well as high-speed diesel fueling. If you're familiar with all the truck traffic and warehouse distribution uses in the area, there is a demand for diesel fueling where the drivers are able to pull in, fill the fuel tanks on both sides of the truck at the same time. That's what that fuel canopy is on the left side and the west side of the building. The east side is conventional automobile fueling facilities. And then as staff pointed out, there's a climate controlled self-storage facility proposed in that large building. We have both surveyed the site as well as done preliminary drainage and floodplain analysis, and had a biologist do a wetland delineation out there. As we show in the concept plan, we're proposing our floodplain mitigation area and stormwater ponds along the north and western sides of the property. Because those are the low points, they also provide opportunity for buffering the next subdivision that's to the west. So all the activities concentrated on the east side at the intersection. As you can see in the aerial and the zoning maps staff presented, there's commercial and industrial warehouse and distribution uses to the north and the south, and mixed use PD to the east, which allows for a variety of residential, commercial, and industrial uses. So we are consistent with the surrounding zoning pattern and are implementing the commercial land use that's already designated on the property. And with that, I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Penza. Does the board have any questions? No. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Penza. This is a public hearing. In the notice for this hearing, the public was advised to contact the city clerk no later than 3 p.m. on August 25th should anyone wish to speak virtually. Madam Clerk, did anyone contact your office to speak at this public hearing?
No requests were received.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this matter?
Yes.
Oh, good. Please come forward. Give us your name, address, and state that you've been sworn in for the record. Thank you. Morning.
My name is Pat Dexter.
Dexter.
And my address, yes, is 1306 Larrick Lane. I represent the Plant City Housing Authority. I'm the executive director. And when I received the notice in reference to be invited to come down and speak to you good people in reference to the rezoning, because I missed the meeting. It's been a busy season during the pandemic. So I missed the original meeting in which the rezoning was going to take place. I don't know how many of you are familiar with our public housing, but we have #1 public housing. And that represents, Larrick Court right there represents 60 families. I need to understand what is the buffering that Mr. Penza is talking about in reference to that, because I'm a housing professional and this is out of my scope. But we need to understand, I'm hearing gas station, a store, a self-storage unit. Just to let you guys know, we just finished a project in which we added to the larger rooms. So we have some of the best public housing in the state. We don't have the same issues that other housing authorities may have. You never hear about us, we're not on the news. And we like it there. So therefore, we are very concerned about this rezoning and the potential of having a store. When I heard a store, I shiver, because we've just gotten a store under control with our substation that's on Maryland Avenue. There's a store that's always been there on the corner of Maryland Avenue and Alabama Street. We just got that under control because across the street, we work in combination with the police department, and we have cameras in every aspect. And with that being said, it has not been the same deterrent and hangout spot for the generations. So when I hear store in reference to low-income people and public housing, it makes me a little bit leery. I'm concerned about it. Another thing that we plan is that once we finish that project, we do have some mixed financing.
You have 30 seconds left.
Okay, that we're working on as well to develop some land that we've gotten from the city. And we were hoping for some disabled veterans, apply for some disabled veterans out there, or maybe for some elderly low-income people on that side of town. So I'm just very concerned about what's getting ready to take place. It could change the dynamic of it, of what we have going. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That graphic that you had earlier that maybe is the best way, I'm not sure if Mr. Penza would speak to that or Robin, so.
I would prefer that Mr. Penza speak because the graphic that I have here, it doesn't give distances. So I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly how far it is from,
Yeah.
But I'll get that graphic back up for you.
How much is Mr. Penza able to see on his end, what we're seeing here?
Yes, I could see the concept plan and I can answer those questions.
All right, well, go ahead, Mr. Penza. You can, if you please address the remarks from Mrs. Dexter of our Housing Authority.
Yes. So as you can see on your screens, the concept plan is up on your screen. The western side of the self-storage facility is approximately 705 feet to the east side of Morgan Street and approximately 100 feet to the closest residential building. So there's a substantial buffer there. And then the convenience store building is about 1,100 feet separation from the closest residential structure. As I presented earlier, we're developing everything on the eastern side of the property, keeping the western side in a natural state, as well as providing for, like I said, stormwater and floodplain mitigation to provide a substantial buffer. The gas station user that is looking to purchase and develop this property is a international owner and operator of gas stations that will be corporately owned. They do have a local presence in Tampa. Their headquarters for the state of Florida is located here locally, and security is of utmost importance to them. They have security cameras, procedural policies in place for training for their staff on security. They coordinate closely with the local police and sheriff's departments. Obviously, security is of utmost importance to make it a pleasant experience for customers to go there and use the facility. So the safety of their customers and their staff is of first and foremost concern to them too. So they will definitely be a good neighbor.
And maybe I need, Robin, could you identify, and this is to make sure Mrs. Dexter is understanding it all, the various buildings that are on this property? The print is so small, it's hard to read from my screen. The one that's got the little the largest footprint there, is that the storage
Yes, sir.
facility? Okay. And then if you go over, there's something kind of a T-shaped. I'm assuming that's the gas line, a gas station entry.
Yes, and it looks like the pumps for the semi trucks, the quick fueling that he was discussing, looks like that's on the western side of the building there. And then the regular gas pumps up on the road like you would normally see.
So that one long rectangle there, that's actually just a big roof with the traditional gas pumps underneath it.
Correct. That's what
That's
it looks. I'll
Yes,
let
sir.
you answer.
Is that correct, Mr. Pensa?
That is correct. The long skinny one, closest to Park Boulevard is your conventional fuel, unleaded and premium gases.
Yeah.
The rectangle, the smaller rectangle there in the middle is the convenience store.
Okay.
The appendage coming off of that to the west is the diesel pumps. The
Yes.
striped area you see next to that is truck parking, so that if someone, for example, whether it be a tractor trailer or a landscape maintenance company that has their, their van and trailer in tow, they could park in those as parallel spaces, go in and use the facilities, purchase coffee, breakfast, whatever, and go back and then get back on the road to wherever they're going. It's important to this user to have large vehicle parking because if you've ever been to facilities that don't have that kind of parking, a lot of people end up parking all over the place and can cause obstructions or issues with operation and circulation. So they design that into it to make it a more pleasant experience using the facility. And then the large kind of L-shaped building is a 3-story climate control storage. So that'll have secure access for customers to go in, store their material, store their stuff, and retrieve it when they want.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Baker,
Yes, sir.
the right across the street from where the proposed gas station, across Alsabrook Street, that's a convenience store also, isn't it? An existing convenience store. Okay.
Correct.
All right. One question I would have too is, as far as the stormwater ponds that are showed, are those going to be fenced? I would assume they would be.
We're not planning on it. The slopes of the ponds are anticipated to be less than a 1-to-4 slope. Once you go above 1-to-4, that's when the Water Management District would require them to be fenced. Since the banks of the ponds would be more gradual, it wouldn't be necessary to fence them.
They would be required, however, to provide buffering around the perimeter of the property along the right-of-ways. So we have specific requirements that are going to separate those ponds from the public. So
yes, yeah, they would be landscaped, correct.
I recognize Mr. Burris.
Mr. Penza, this is Jeremy Burris. What is it going to be, like a Wawa type gas station that's 24 hours, or is it a gas station that's going to be shut down 11 o'clock at night?
It's planned to be a 24-hour facility. And again, they do have on-site security measures.
Okay. And how about lighting? One of the questions I have, being close to the, I guess, the homeowners in that area, will the lighting be thought of in such a fashion that it's not 100 feet, that it's not blinding those people that live in that community, or is there going to be a thought process to that? Since you're going to be open 24/7, I'm just kind of curious if you can maybe talk about that a moment.
Yes, yeah, we'll comply with the city's lighting ordinance. They have the tenant, the owner, the operator has their own internal lighting standards. If they are within the city's requirements, they will provide their standard lighting. If the city has more stringent standards, we will adjust them accordingly to accommodate that. I believe the city requires a lighting plan as part of the submittal. But to go more directly to your question, yes, it is. The residential use will be taken into account. There also will be that storage facility in between, as well as the wetland and the ponds. So the storage building will provide a visual break between the lighting for the gas station and the residential.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion from the board? Any questions? Okay. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak? Anyone else? Okay. Being no further speakers, the meeting is closed. Did I go through the question of anybody that called? Did I already do that? I did, okay.
Good.
This virtual is like straddling a little river. Sometimes it's running fast, sometimes it's empty. Yeah. Is there any further discussion by board? Yeah. Okay. What's the pleasure of the board? Yeah. Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we rezone PB 20/2024 as is consistent with Chapter 102 zoning of Plant City's Code of Ordinances and Imagine 2040 Plan, City Comprehensive Plan.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Burris. Is there a second? I'll second that. I think I heard Mr. Thurston first, so second by
Driggers. Mr. Driggers.
Oh, was it? I'm sorry. It was your voice. Sure. Okay, you were doing a ventriloquist thing, maybe?
It's the beard.
I recognize we have a second from Doug Driggers. Any discussion of the motion? Okay, call for the vote. Madam Clerk?
Chair Wood,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burris,
Yes.
Bonnie Carr,
Yes.
Doug Jiggers, Nick Thurston,
Yes.
Bruce Rodwell,
Yes.
Jason Jones.
Yes.
Thank you. Vote passes 7-0.
Thank you. Thank you. Next order of business is under other business and announcements. We have an attendance report. There were absences at our last meeting by Doug Driggers and Bonnie Carr. So I'm looking for a motion to excuse Mr. Driggers and Ms. Carr's absence. Would anyone care to make that motion? Yeah.
A motion, is it both the same motion?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to excuse Doug and Bonnie from last meeting.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Burris. Is there a second? Second. I heard you. Mr. Thurston makes the second. Yeah. Any discussion of the motion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. No further discussion. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Chair Wood,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burris,
Yes.
Bonnie Carr,
Yes.
Doug Driggers,
Yes.
Nick Thurston,
Yes.
Bruce Rodwell,
Yes.
Jason Jones.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vote passes 7-0.
The only other business that might come before us, as I mentioned when we did the minutes review, is pushing that notice boundary to 250 feet. I don't know how long it will take, so I don't know if we want to venture into this topic this morning or not. I know that some people have to leave at 10 or be somewhere else at 10. Leave at 10. Okay.
If I may speak about it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you'd make the initial comment.
Yeah. You know, I know we ought to talk in a quasi judicial form. And I'll be honest with you, I think it needs to be well past 250 feet. You know, we're talking about some of the things we've done in Plant City recently where we're building 200,000, 500,000, 1 million square foot facilities. And currently we're only notifying people within 100 feet. And that's just not good enough. You know, you think about 100 feet, I think that from here to this wall is probably 40 feet. So it's safe to say that anything past the parking lot outside, nobody's being noticed, in my opinion, because I assume that must be done in a circumference. So I would just, as we think about this, we don't have to decide on it today, but maybe next few months even, because this is a big impact. But I think we should be closer to 5,280 feet, which is a mile. And I'm not meaning that the city of Plant City should shoulder that burden. I think the applicant should probably have to pay that cost for mailings and stuff like that. But again, if you think about what 150 to 250 feet is, to only notify these people, it's just not enough. I'd be really upset if I lived on Charlie Taylor Road and there was a 1 million square foot facility or 500,000 square foot facility that's going to completely change the identity of that community. And we only told people within 100 feet of it. Because oftentimes a homeowner doesn't even notice something's going on until they see dirt being turned. By then it's too late. So again, we could talk about it. We'll not decide today, but I think it needs to be way more distance than 250 feet even. I'm thinking half mile to a mile. That's just my thought.
Chair,
I recognize Bonnie. Go ahead and speak, Bonnie.
I agree with Jeremy. I think one of the big differences is the magnitude and the impact of the developments that we're looking at now. You know, we were just looking for consistency in a neighborhood. That's one thing, but we are looking at major industrial impacts, and they're much more far-reaching than, you know, the current, I guess, 100 feet. So I agree that it needs to be a broader net for input because of the potential impact. So I'm not sure what that is. I agree that, you know, if I were a mile away with some of these industrial developments, I would certainly want to be notified.
So this is Robin Baker. I would like to make a clarification that we actually noticed 250 feet lessing out the roadways. So
Right.
So technically from all edges of the property, we are noticing all adjacent property owners within 250 feet. And again, we're supposed to not include the right-of-way amount in that 250 feet.
Right.
So in most places in the city, it's really 300 feet that we're noticing.
Right.
And I thought it might be important to educate you on why we do the adjacent property owner notices. And it's just basic land law in the sense of, in general, adjoining landowners are expected to use their property reasonably without unduly interfering with their neighbors. Okay, so any state recommendation or requirements for notices are based on the properties that abut the property itself, because you're not supposed to do anything on your property that would affect your immediate neighbors. So that 250 feet, which is pretty standard in an urban type setting,
Right.
is to make sure that you're encompassing the properties that are immediately adjoining the property. Now, what we do also on top of that is we post signs on the property to notice this hearing, so that those properties that don't immediately abut the property get some type of notice. They get to see the sign. We also place notice on the website through the city clerk. She puts up the agenda. So there's a lot of different avenues for property owners outside of that 250 feet to get notice of the meeting. I did do some calculations based on what you said at the last planning board, and that was in specific reference to that special use that we did for the
Right.
neighborhood. And we talked about transportation and that sort of thing. So at 250 feet, we noticed approximately 51 neighbors. Even though that particular property is pretty large, all the properties around it are normal size subdivisions. So there were quite a few people that were noticed of that hearing. Now, let's just say we expanded it to 500, we would have noticed 107 property owners. At 1,000 feet, it's 303. At a mile, as you suggest, is 1,000.
Yeah.
As of right now, city staff does those notices. And that was just added to the bylaws recently, just because there was so much back and forth with the applicant to make sure they had the notice letter correct. And so it was just wasting so much time. We were just like, you know what, we'll just do it. And so right now, city staff is creating the letters, making the copies, you know, stuffing the envelopes, and the city is paying for the postage currently.
Yeah.
So it's just something to keep in mind as we move forward, that, you know, our policy right now is, you know, the basic bundle of rights that you get with your property, and we are noticing those properties that abut the subject property, and even more so, because, you know, your standard subdivision lot is only about 100 feet deep, sometimes 120. So if we're doing 250 feet, we're at least, if it's facing this way, we're at least getting 2 to 3 deep in that, you know, that area. So just something to keep in mind.
Just wanted to just mention, I think it was in 2014 is when we used to notify 150 feet away.
Mhm.
And I think it was 2014, we changed it to 250 feet to match the planning commission. That's what their notice requirement.
That's what Hillsborough County does.
No, the Hillsborough County Planning Commission.
Yeah, that's what I mean, Hillsborough
The
County.
planning commission notices 250 feet for their comp plan. So when a comp plan comes in to change the land use for something in the city limits, they notice people within 250 feet.
Yeah.
So we changed our zoning to match.
It's sacred.
Now, Hillsborough County Planning and Zoning, they do the same thing. They have 2 different areas. They have an urban service area and a rural service area. So if you're in the certain plan categories that are 1 unit per acre and more, so they have 1 per 5 or 1 per 1. If you're in those land use categories, you have to be 500 feet, knowing that the properties are larger in those areas. But any type of urban setting is pretty much the standard to do 250 feet less out the roadways. The county changed theirs to 300 feet, just so they didn't have to worry with the right-of-way part, because so many people were missing that and they had missed notices and that sort of thing. So they changed theirs to 300 feet so they didn't have to less out the railroads, the right-of-ways. But it's 250 feet in an urban setting is pretty standard across the board.
Yeah, my challenge is specifically, you think of these industrial buildings we're creating, I don't give it's 300 feet. You're fixing to put 1 million square foot, 500,000 square foot facility that's going to have a great deal of traffic, right? And maybe 24/7 traffic. And I can appreciate maybe a community like, Wall Lake, and we notice some people within 250, 350 feet, there's going to be another home planted there. But when you're talking about completely changing it from like an ag use to some really big differences, I just think we should communicate it. And again, going back to the city, I don't think it should be the city's burden to mail a stamp to, if it's 200 feet or 5,000 feet, whatever we decide. I think the developer should have to pay for that. That's how I see it. But again, I don't want to beat a dead horse. I'm completely against that we only notice within a couple hundred feet. I think it should be further reaching than that in a big way. And I'd rather lead it than follow what the other communities are doing. Because quite frankly, some of the other communities don't do a good job. And we need to be more transparent. We need to make sure that people in our community know what's direction we're moving. And I just think we need to give every citizen in our community a chance to talk about how our community is going to change in an impactful way. And I just hate to think that we may be making these decisions where people don't get their voices heard, because we assume people check the City Plant City website. They don't. We assume they see that small little yellow sign. They may go a different way that day. They don't see it. The only way they're going to know about it is if we mail them. And there may be, quite frankly, a little old lady who lives in a nursing home and the home's sitting there vacant and that family didn't hear about it, right? Because they didn't drive by it. So again, I just think it should be a lot further, because every citizen should have a voice in how their communities can be changed. And 250 feet is just, in my opinion, not enough.
I would just say thank you to the staff for that additional information, because I think, what we have is maybe a distinction between legal notice and more of a public relations management and communication. In listening to why we have established that, and I do remember expanding it to be consistent, with the county and, with other standards. So I'm not as, I guess, uncomfortable with that if it's aligning with, what have been said as legal noticing. I think what the planning board might want to recommend, and if the website's out there, just anything we can do from a public relations, because all of this should be falling under the comprehensive plan. And that, quite frankly, speaks to expecting some of these large industrial developments coming in. I think what people would want to know, how close is it to my neighborhood? So I think that's more of a PR of our comprehensive plan. And when these huge projects initially surface may be a real, very direct blast, so that, we feel like we have presented these ideas before they come to this point in the process.
Okay, appreciate all the good thoughts. Any other board members want to express an opinion? And the language in our rules is pretty straightforward. This number or that. There's no.
It says 250 feet.
And there's no variations except for rural or except for industrial, or just 250 period.
No.
Okay. Could you review those impact numbers again? You said the radius circles, and again, that was for that situation.
Sure.
If it was a relatively less dense area than other parts of the city, would that be?
Yes and no. On the south side of Reynolds Street, there are some larger pieces there.
Okay.
But everything to the north and east is pretty dense.
Okay.
So again, at 250 feet, which is our normal notice distance, we had 51 residents that were notified. At 500 feet, it would be 107. At 1,000 feet, it would have been 303. And at 1 mile, it would have been 1,000 residents.
Okay. Good. Again, Mr. Burris is making the distinction between something with a high impact. Have you ever made exceptions, something that that you knew was going to have affect people more than 250 feet away? Have you ever made exceptions and broadened that just for for that particular situation?
Not by a large amount, you know, I mean, when I do my radius, I'm looking at a map when I do it.
Okay.
And if that 250-foot line comes real close to the guy next door, I go ahead and loop him in,
Right.
you know, obviously because he's so close to that
Yeah.
250 feet that I will go ahead and add him to the list. But no,
Okay.
my personal experience, we haven't done anything large, you know,
Okay.
not a large extension.
Yeah. Well, as a board member, I would feel you have that discretion, you know, that if you feel there's some people out there because of the way the road bends that are going to be impacted, that are outside the 250, that, you know, let them all know, you know, that kind of thing. Whether we said 500 or a mile, you know, there may be cases where we would want you to make an exception because those people are going to be impacted.
Right.
Okay.
And as a planner, I would say that I would agree in the sense of land use changes. But outside of that, I think that unless, you know, it's a resident that's been here for years and years and years and years and years prior to the comprehensive plan, I think most people are probably aware of what is in their neighborhood when they purchase into that neighborhood. At least hopefully they do their due diligence, and you know, we're always available for questions as people do their due diligence as they buy property. But yes, I can see as a land use change, that type of thing, that's definitely something that, you know, could be looked at, but that's the planning commission that does that, and we would have to coordinate with them.
Okay.
But yeah.
Does we forward on, of course, to the full city commission. Do they have their own criteria? And is this,
They don't, I mean, there's nothing in the statute that requires either the posting the notices or the mailing of the notices, and what you have for the planning board is over and above what is required by the state statute.
so when one of these items, like on today's meeting, goes to the city commission, there won't be a mailing at all to the citizens around that
Nothing
property?
required. I don't know if y'all mailing it. Okay, they do mention it, but it's
You use the same 250 that we use? Okay, so presumably it's the identical list. So whatever if we push the boundaries out, then push the boundaries out for the city, the hearing by the city commission, and in effect double it. We reach out to where 1,000 people are getting mailed, and the city commission itself would then have to mail to 1,000 people also. You know,
I totally understand
Okay.
the cost and the challenges. I just think, you know, we've annexed a lot of property to Plant City as of recent, a lot of rural property. Quite frankly, these people that have been annexed in or close to it didn't even have maybe a decision. So again, I just look at a guy who maybe owns an acre of land or whatever the property is. He's got his investment home, his only property. And, you know, I would like to know if something more than 250 feet was fixing to happen that's going to significantly impact my surroundings. Then that's all.
Okay. I'm going to try to wrap it up. Where are we leaving this item? And I'll let
Maybe we
Mr.
could-
Burr speak to it.
I think we should think about it, just do our own research and just think about it. I don't think this is a big thing. We don't need to make that decision today. I've been saying that. I don't think we'll make it 3 months from now. I just think we should think about it. And I just really think that we want to make sure every citizen has an opportunity to have input on how our community is going to change. And I'll just leave it with that.
So do you want it on next month's agenda or skip? These people are very precise.
Yeah. What do you guys think? I don't want to be the only one who's that concerned about it. If I'm the one concerned about
Take it up in 2 months or
Yeah.
something like that?
I'd say 2
Look
months.
into it. So I agree. Let's do it 2 months. Give us some time to look into it.
Okay. And you kind of read my mind with that expanding the radius thing. So thank you for your work on that. Very insightful. So thank you. Is that okay for everybody? Bring it up 2 months? Revisit it? I want to thank everybody for the great work. Even people you don't get thanked because they're behind the scenes did a great job. Carrie and staff, you're wonderful. You know, so, and thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Yeah. Any other business to come before the group? Yeah. Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Have a great day.